The first ship arrived at the rendezvous point 6 days after Jake's message went out. It was a mining hauler from the asteroid belt, its hull scarred and patched, limping on damaged engines. Captain Helen Wright brought 43 survivors with her, miners, engineers, and 3 children who stared at the Defiance with hollow eyes. "We saw it happen," Helen told Jake in the Defiance's tiny briefing room. She was a tough woman in her 50s, her face lined with exhaustion and grief. "We were hauling ore when all the Earth channels went dead. By the time we got close enough to see what happened, there was nothing we could do. Nothing but run." More ships came. A colony transport from Mars carrying 200 evacuees, a corporate research vessel, a water hauler from Europa, a passenger liner that had been en route to Titan when the attack happened. Each brought survivors and stories of loss. Each brought rage barely held in check. Within 2 months, 67 ships gathered at the coordinates. It wasn't a fleet. It was a collection of desperate refugees with vessels never designed for combat. But it was a start. Jake called a meeting with the ship captains. They gathered via video link, their faces displayed on screens throughout the Defiance's cargo bay. Some were military, but most were civilians thrust into impossible circumstances. "We have 3,000 people," Jake said, standing before the assembled faces. 67 ships. No weapons except mining lasers and a few small arms. "The Krell Dominion has warships that could destroy us without slowing down. Then why are we here?" someone asked. "Why not run to the outer colonies and hide?" Jake had expected the question. "Because they won't stop with Earth. They hit us because they thought we might be dangerous someday. That means they'll hunt down every human settlement to finish the job. We can die running or we can die fighting. Either way, we die. But only one of those options gives us a chance to take them with us." The screens were silent. Then Helen Wright spoke up. "I lost my son on Earth. He was visiting his grandmother in Boston." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were red. "I've got 43 people on my ship who lost everyone. We've got nothing left to lose. So yeah, I'm in. Tell us what you need." One by one, the other captains agreed. They had all lost someone. Most had lost everyone. The Krell had taken their world, their families, their future. All that remained was the need to hit back, even if it was hopeless. Marcus came to Jake late that night with news. "I've been analyzing the debris from Earth's orbit. I found something. There were 3 military installations on distant moons that might have survived. Deep black sites that weren't on any public records." "What kind of installations?" Jake asked. "The kind where Earth kept its secret weapons programs. If they're still intact, we might have access to experimental technology, maybe even ships designed for combat." It took 3 weeks to reach the first site, hidden on a small moon orbiting a gas giant. The facility was intact, its automated defenses still active. Marcus managed to hack the security systems using command codes they'd salvaged from debris. What they found inside changed everything. Project Revenant, 20 prototype warships designed for deep strike operations against superior forces. They were smaller than traditional warships, built for speed and stealth rather than direct confrontation. Their weapons were experimental, focused energy beams that could punch through heavy armor and missile systems designed to overwhelm defensive screens. But there was a problem. The ships needed trained crews, and most of humanity's military personnel had died on Earth. "We'll train new crews," Amy Wells said. She had gathered every pilot from the refugee fleet, 32 people total, most with only civilian flight experience. "We don't have time for proper training, so we'll learn on the job." Kate Phillips took charge of the engineers, pulling together mechanics and technicians from mining ships and industrial facilities. They studied the Revenant ships, learning their systems through trial and error. "We need to retrofit all our ships," she announced. "Every cargo hauler, every transport, they need to be able to fight. We'll mount whatever weapons we can scavenge." The refugee fleet transformed. Mining lasers were recalibrated for combat. Cargo bays were converted into fighter hangars. Transport ships had their engines modified for combat maneuvering. It was crude, improvised, and desperate, but it was something. Marcus made another discovery. While studying intercepted Krell communications, he found intelligence about their empire. The Krell controlled thousands of worlds, but not through loyalty. Many species served them out of fear. If humanity could prove the Krell could be beaten, those subject species might rebel. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Marcus explained to the command group. "Supply depots, isolated outposts, anything that shows weakness. We make them bleed in front of their subjects." Helen Wright had a different suggestion. We need more than that. We need to give ourselves a name. Something that'll stick in Krell minds. Something that'll scare them. Jake thought about it. They were supposed to be dead, wiped out in the attack on Earth. But here they were, gathering strength in the darkness, preparing to strike back from beyond the grave. The Ghost Fleet, he said. We're already dead to them. Let's make sure they know the dead can still fight. 6 months after Earth's destruction, the Ghost Fleet was ready. 20 Revenant warships with barely trained crews. 47 converted civilian vessels armed with improvised weapons. 3,000 humans who had nothing left but the need for vengeance. Their first target was a Krell supply depot in an isolated system. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended, restocking convoys heading to the Dominion's frontier territories. It was supposed to be an easy target, a test of their capabilities. Jake led the attack personally aboard a Revenant ship they'd named Defiant Spirit. Amy flew alongside him with a squadron of converted mining ships. Kate had jury-rigged every system to give them maximum combat effectiveness for exactly 30 minutes before the reactors would need to cool down. They hit the depot at dawn, local time. The Krell never saw them coming. The element of surprise lasted exactly 90 seconds. Then Krell defense systems activated and automated weapons platforms opened fire. 2 of the civilian ships died in the first volley, torn apart by weapons designed to stop military warships. But the humans had one advantage the Krell didn't expect. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting because they were already dead, and dead men don't fear death. Amy's squadron flew straight into the defensive fire, not dodging, not hesitating. They traded their ships for targeting data, letting the Revenant warships know exactly where to shoot. The Krell platforms expected enemies who valued their lives. They got humans who valued revenge more. Jake watched 2 of his pilots die to take out a single platform. He watched a cargo hauler ram a Krell ammunition dump when its weapons failed, the explosion taking out 3 enemy ships. He watched humans fight with mathematical precision and suicidal courage, and he understood what the Krell had created. They'd tried to eliminate a species. Instead, they'd refined it down to its most dangerous essence. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Krell depot was a burning wreck. The Ghost Fleet had lost 9 ships and 200 lives. But they'd won. Against all odds, against superior technology and training, they'd won. Marcus intercepted the Krell distress calls. The enemy's confusion was evident even through translation software. How had humans survived? Where had they gotten warships? What were they? The answers would haunt the Krell. Humans survived because they refused to die. They got warships by building them from desperation and rage. And what they were was simple: they were ghosts. And ghosts existed only for revenge. Jake sent out a new message that night. Not just to humans, but broadcast on frequencies the Krell would intercept. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Ghost Fleet. We're still here. We're still fighting. And we're coming for all of you. The Krell Dominion had wanted to prevent humanity from becoming dangerous. They had attacked Earth to eliminate a potential threat before it could develop. But threats aren't born. They're made. And the Krell had just finished making one. 2 years passed. The war ground on with brutal persistence. The Ghost Fleet never stopped moving. They hit supply convoys, destroyed communications relays, and assassinated Krell commanders. They fought from the shadows, appearing without warning and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. The Krell called them phantoms, demons, the dead who wouldn't stay dead. Jake Morrison looked older now. Lines creased his face and his hair had gone gray at the temples. He stood on the bridge of the Defiant Spirit, studying reports from the latest raid. 12 Krell cargo ships destroyed. 3 human vessels lost. The math was always the same. They hurt the enemy, but the cost kept climbing. How many do we have left? He asked Helen Wright. She'd become his second in command. Her mining hauler long since replaced by a captured Krell frigate she'd renamed Earthbound. 41 ships operational. 2,200 personnel. Helen pulled up the casualty lists. We've lost 800 people in the last 6 months alone. We're recruiting from the outer colonies, but it's not enough. We're bleeding out, Jake, he knew. Every battle took its toll. They won fights through tactics and determination, but the Krell had unlimited reinforcements. Humanity had only what they could scrape together from survivors. We need allies, Marcus said from his station. He'd become their intelligence expert, learning Krell language and culture through intercepted transmissions. The Krell Empire isn't as unified as they pretend. There are subject species who hate them. If we can get them to rebel, it divides the Krell's attention. The galactic community won't help us, Amy added bitterly. She'd become squadron leader for their fighter corps, training new pilots to replace the ones who died. I've monitored Council transmissions. They know what's happening and they're doing nothing. The Council of Free Worlds was a coalition of species that maintained neutrality in galactic conflicts. They had representatives from dozens of worlds, including one human diplomat named Vera Schmidt, who'd been stationed on a neutral world when Earth fell. She'd been pleading humanity's case for 2 years. Jake had listened to her transmissions. She spoke eloquently about justice, about defending innocent species against aggression. The Council listened politely and did nothing. They feared the Krell too much to intervene. Then we changed the equation, Jake decided. We hit them hard enough that the Council can't ignore us, and we prove to the Krell's subject species that their masters can bleed. The opportunity came 3 months later. Marcus intercepted intelligence about a Krell battle group escorting a colonization convoy. They were heading to a newly conquered world to establish a permanent presence. The battle group consisted of 6 heavy cruisers, twice as many escort ships, and hundreds of transport vessels carrying Krell colonists. The Ghost Fleet had 41 ships. The Krell had 6 cruisers, each individually more powerful than anything humanity possessed. It's suicide, Helen said bluntly when Jake proposed the attack. We'll be lucky if 10% of our people survive. Probably, Jake agreed. But if we win, we prove humanity can stand against them in a real fleet engagement. Right now the galaxy thinks we're just terrorists, remnants too stubborn to die. If we destroy a battle group, they'll know we're a legitimate military force. Amy studied the tactical data. The Krell rely on rigid command structures. If we take out their flagship, the rest of the formation falls into disarray. Their strength is coordination. Make them lose coordination and they're vulnerable. Kate had been silent, running calculations on her datapad. I can rig our reactor cores for overload. Give us a power spike that'll let us punch above our weight. But it's one shot. After that, the ships will need complete refits or they're scrap. One shot is all we need, Jake said. The vote among the fleet captains was close. 23 in favor, 18 against. But it passed, and the Ghost Fleet prepared for the largest engagement they'd ever attempted. They hit the Krell battle group as it transited between star systems, catching them in the vulnerable period when FTL drives were cycling down. The humans came in fast, their modified engines pushing past safety limits, weapons charged and targeting systems locked on the Krell flagship. The battle was chaos from the first second. Krell defense systems opened up, filling space with energy beams and missile fire. 4 human ships died in the opening salvo, simply erased by weapons that made their improvised armor meaningless. But the rest kept coming, spreading out, forcing the Krell to divide their fire. Amy led the fighter squadron straight down the throat of the Krell formation. Her pilots flew with the reckless precision they'd learned over 2 years of desperate combat. They weren't trying to destroy the cruisers. They were drawing fire, creating gaps in the defensive screen. Jake brought the defiant spirit through one of those gaps. Its reactor overloaded and weapons running at 150% capacity. He targeted the flagship's bridge with every weapon they had. Beside him, 3 other Revenant ships did the same, pouring focused fire into a single point. The flagship's shields held, then flickered, then collapsed under the sustained assault. All ships target the flagship's engineering section, Jake ordered. Kate, give me everything the reactor's got. The warning lights on his console turned red, then flashed urgent warnings. The reactor was approaching critical failure. Kate's voice came over the comm, strained but calm. 30 seconds until containment breach. Make them count. Jake held the trigger down. Around him, the Ghost Fleet poured fire into the dying flagship. The great Krell vessel's hull began to buckle, explosions blossoming along its length. Then its main reactor went critical, and the flagship transformed into a miniature sun. The shockwave caught 2 Krell escorts and 3 human ships. They died together in the expanding fireball. But Jake had been right about one thing. Without their flagship, the Krell formation lost coordination. Escort ships hesitated, waiting for orders that didn't come. Cruisers broke formation, trying to re-establish command authority. The humans gave them no time. They swarmed the confused Krell vessels like wolves bringing down prey much larger than themselves. They traded ships for kills, accepting losses that would horrify any trained military commander. Helen rammed her frigate into a Krell cruiser's engines when her weapons ran dry. The explosion crippled the cruiser, leaving it dead in space for other human ships to finish off. She and her crew made it to escape pod seconds before impact. Amy's fighter wing lost half its pilots breaking through to the troop transports, but they got through, and the civilian transports had no defenses. Hundreds of Krell colonists died in the attack, and the humans felt no guilt. The Krell had killed billions. This was mathematics. When it was over, the Krell battle group was destroyed. All 6 cruisers were gone along with most of the escorts. The colonization convoy was scattered wreckage drifting in the void. The Ghost Fleet had paid for it. 19 ships survived out of 41. 800 humans dead. The remaining vessels were damaged, their reactors burned out, their weapons depleted. But they'd won. Against overwhelming odds in a stand-up fleet engagement, humanity had defeated the Krell. Marcus intercepted the transmissions immediately afterward. The Krell High Command was in shock. Council representatives were buzzing with shocked commentary. And on 3 Krell-controlled worlds, subject species rose in rebellion, inspired by news that the mighty Dominion could be beaten. Vera Schmidt's next transmission to the Council was different. She didn't plead. She didn't beg. She simply stated facts. Humanity had defeated a Krell battle group. The Dominion was vulnerable, and the species who continued to ignore this genocide would be judged by history. The Council granted humanity a hearing. Jake didn't care about hearings. He broadcast his own message to the Krell High Command. His face was haggard, his uniform torn and blood-stained from pulling wounded from wreckage. But his voice was steady. You came to Earth to eliminate a threat. You killed our families. You destroyed our home. You tried to exterminate us because you feared what we might become. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Now you know, we're the thing you feared. We're the species that doesn't surrender. And we're coming for you. All of you. The transmission ended. The Krell Empire began fortifying its borders, pulling ships from the frontier to defend the core worlds. Subject species saw their oppressors weakening and pushed harder in rebellion. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen next. The Ghost Fleet limped to a hidden repair station, a converted asteroid mining facility. They needed to rebuild, rearm, and replace their losses. But morale was higher than it had been in 2 years. They'd proven something important. Not just to the Krell or the Council, but to themselves. Humanity could win, and if they could win once, they could win again. Commander Jake Morrison stared at the communications panel with growing dread. 3 hours had passed since Earth went silent. Not a single transmission, not one signal, nothing but empty static where the homeworld's constant chatter should have been. Still nothing? Asked Amy Wells from the pilot's seat. Her hands gripped the controls tighter than necessary. She already knew the answer. Jake shook his head. The USS Defiance hung in the darkness of the Kepler belt, a small research vessel that suddenly felt very alone. Behind him, Dr. Marcus Green worked frantically at the science station, cycling through every frequency humanity had ever used. Kate Phillips had torn apart the communications array twice, certain there must be a malfunction. There was no malfunction. Mars Colony isn't responding either, Marcus said quietly. Neither is Luna Base, the Titan stations. Nothing from anywhere in the inner system. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Amy turned in her seat, her face pale. That's not possible. Systems fail, but not everything at once. Not unless she didn't finish. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. Jake stood up, his decision made. Kate, how fast can we get to Earth? The engineer looked up from her console. If we burn the engines hot? 3 weeks. Maybe less if I push the reactor beyond safety limits. Do it, Jake said. We're going home. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. They all knew protocol said to wait for instructions, to maintain their position until Command contacted them. But Command wasn't contacting anyone. Something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. The Defiance turned toward Earth and accelerated hard. The journey took 19 days of increasing anxiety. They tried every hour to raise someone, anyone. They sent messages into the void and received only silence in return. Sleep came in brief, restless intervals. Kate worked 18-hour shifts, keeping the engines running beyond their design specifications. Amy plotted and replotted their course, shaving minutes off their arrival time. Jake spent most of his time on the command deck, watching the distance to Earth shrink on the navigation display. He thought about his sister in Seattle, his parents in Florida, his friends scattered across the planet. He thought about 8 billion people going about their lives, unaware that a small research ship was racing desperately toward them. When they finally entered the inner system, Marcus spotted it first. "Oh God," he whispered. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers. Twisted metal that had once been orbital stations tumbled slowly in the darkness. Satellites had been reduced to expanding clouds of shrapnel. The moon's surface bore fresh craters, some still glowing with residual heat. And everywhere there were bodies in spacesuits, frozen and lifeless. Amy's hands trembled on the controls. Kate made a sound that might have been a sob. Marcus just stared, his scientific mind unable to process the scale of destruction. Jake forced himself to speak. "Take us closer. I need to see Earth." The planet grew larger in their view screen. At first it looked normal, the familiar blue and white and brown of humanity's cradle. Then they drew near enough to see the details, and Jake felt something break inside his chest. Entire continents bore massive scorch marks. Cities that had blazed with light were now smoking ruins. The atmosphere roiled with ash clouds from hundreds of impact sites. Orbital scans showed radiation signatures consistent with weapons far beyond human technology. Earth hadn't just been attacked. It had been systematically devastated. "Life signs?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Marcus worked his console with shaking hands. Scattered weak, some bunkers in remote areas, underground facilities, the deep ocean colonies might have survived. But the surface, his voice cracked. The surface population centers are gone. All of them, Jake did the math in his head. 8 billion people. The vast majority lived in cities, in coastal regions, in places that would have been primary targets. Even if a billion survived the initial attack, they faced a world poisoned by radiation and ash. "Who did this?" Amy asked. Her voice was very small. Kate had already pulled up data from the debris field. "I'm detecting residual energy signatures. Configuration doesn't match any human design. There's also this." She put it on the main screen. A ship, massive and alien, its hull decorated with angular symbols. It hung in high orbit like a predator surveying its kill. As they watched, it turned and accelerated away, jumping to faster-than-light travel with a flash of exotic energy. "I managed to intercept some of their communications," Marcus said. He looked sick. "Their language is nothing like ours, but the computer found patterns. Translation is rough, but the meaning is clear enough. They call themselves the Krell Dominion. This was a preemptive strike. They saw humanity as potentially dangerous, so they decided to eliminate the threat before it could develop." The words echoed in the small bridge. A preemptive strike. Earth hadn't provoked anyone. Humanity hadn't threatened anyone. They had simply existed, and that had been enough to warrant extinction. Jake walked to the view screen and placed his hand against it, staring at his burning homeworld. His sister was down there somewhere, probably dead. His parents. His friends. Billions of people who had woken up that morning with plans and dreams and hopes, never knowing it was their last day. Something cold and hard settled into his chest, displacing the shock and grief. He turned to his crew. "Record this," he said. Marcus activated the ship's communication system. Jake stepped in front of the camera. He looked tired, his uniform rumpled from weeks of worry, but his eyes held something new, a terrible, focused determination. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the USS Defiance," he began. His voice was calm, almost emotionless. "To any humans receiving this transmission, Earth has been attacked by an alien force called the Krell Dominion. Casualties are in the billions. Our homeworld is burning. Our orbital infrastructure is destroyed. They hit us without warning, without mercy, without reason except that they feared what we might become." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "They wanted to eliminate a threat. Instead, they've created one. I'm sending coordinates for a rendezvous point in the asteroid belt. Every human ship, every colony, every station. If you can hear this, if you're still alive, then you have a choice to make. We can hide and hope they forget about us, or we can show them exactly why they should have feared us." Jake's expression didn't change, but his next words carried the weight of a promise written in stone. "You attacked our home." He cut the transmission. The bridge was silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Amy stared at him with wide eyes. Kate had stopped crying, her jaw set with new purpose. Marcus slowly nodded, understanding what Jake was proposing. It was impossible, of course. They were one small ship against an interstellar empire. They had no fleet, no weapons, no way to fight back against the force that had casually destroyed Earth. By every logical measure, they should run and hide and pray the Krell forgot about humanity. But logic had died when Earth burned. What remained was something far more dangerous, humans with nothing left to lose. Set course for the rendezvous coordinates, Jake ordered, and send that message on every frequency we have. Keep sending it until someone answers. The Defiance turned away from Earth, leaving behind the graveyard of humanity's past. Ahead lay only darkness and the slim hope that somewhere out there, other humans had survived. That somewhere, others would hear the message and make the same choice. The Krell Dominion had wanted to prevent humanity from becoming dangerous. They were about to discover their mistake. The victory changed everything and nothing at all. Humanity had proven they could fight. But the Krell Empire still controlled thousands of worlds and commanded fleets that dwarfed anything the Ghost Fleet could muster. The question wasn't whether humanity could win battles. It was whether they could win the war. Jake gathered his senior officers in the command center of their hidden base. The asteroid facility had become humanity's new headquarters, a warren of tunnels and converted chambers where the survivors planned their next moves. "We've got a decision to make," Jake said, pulling up a star map. At its center, highlighted in red, was Krell Prime, the heavily fortified homeworld of the Krell Dominion. We can keep hitting their supply lines and hope they eventually give up, or we can take the fight to them. Helen stared at the map. Krell Prime? That's insane. Their homeworld has defensive stations that could wipe out our entire fleet. They have hundreds of ships in orbit. We'd be flying into a meat grinder. She's right, added Carl Jensen, the mining supervisor from Titan who now commanded the refitted ore haulers. We've got 70 ships now after recruiting from the colonies. The Krell have thousands. Basic math says we lose. Marcus brought up intelligence reports. But here's what we've learned. The Krell are pulling ships from their frontier worlds to defend their core systems. They're worried about the rebellions we've inspired. Their empire is fracturing. If we hit Krell Prime now while they're distracted, we might have a chance. Might have a chance to do what? Amy asked. She'd been promoted to admiral after the last battle, commanding all fighter operations. Even if we fight our way through their defenses, what's the objective? We can't occupy their planet. We don't have ground forces. Jake touched a control and the map zoomed in on Krell Prime. We're not there to occupy. We're there to send a message. We take out their high command. Without central leadership, the Krell Empire collapses. Their subject species break free. The Council can't ignore that humanity struck at the heart of their oppressors. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Jake was proposing. It wasn't a military operation. It was a suicide mission wrapped in the thin hope of strategic victory. Paul Bennett spoke up. He'd been a cargo pilot before the war, and now commanded the Titan battle group. My people signed up to fight because Earth is gone. Because everyone we loved is dead. If we're going to die anyway, better to die doing something that matters. I'm in. One by one, the others agreed. They'd lost too much to stop now. The war had become the only thing keeping them going. Without it, they'd have to face the reality of what they'd lost. But not everyone supported the plan. Kate pulled Jake aside after the meeting. We're running on fumes, she said quietly. 70 ships sounds impressive until you look at their condition. Half need major repairs. Our weapons are cobbled together from salvage. The pilots are exhausted. We've been fighting for 2 years without a break. I know, Jake said. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Kate's voice was hard. Amy lost another 6 pilots last week in a training accident. Training accident, Jake. They're so tired they're making mistakes in simulation. Helen's got a dozen crew members on medication for stress disorders. We're breaking and you're proposing the hardest fight yet. Jake looked at his friend. Kate had been with him since the beginning, keeping ships running through impossible circumstances. She'd earned the right to speak truth. What do you want me to do? He asked. I don't know, Kate admitted. But I needed you to hear it. These are people, not weapons. And we're using them up. Marcus interrupted their conversation. Jake, you need to see this. The intelligence officer had intercepted a Krell transmission. The message was encoded, but Marcus had cracked their security weeks ago. What it revealed made Jake's decision for him. The Krell High Command had issued new orders. They were sending hunter groups to locate and destroy every remaining human colony. The outer settlements, the hidden facilities, the scattered survivors, all of them targeted for extermination. The Krell intended to finish what they started. When? Jake asked. They're mobilizing now. Best estimate, they'll hit the first colonies in 3 months. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. Jake showed the message to his officers. The response was immediate and unanimous. They couldn't hide. They couldn't run. Their only option was to strike first, to hit the Krell so hard that they had to pull back their hunter groups to defend themselves. They had to attack Krell Prime. The next 3 months were a blur of preparation. Every ship was refitted. Every weapon system upgraded with whatever they could salvage or steal. The Seraph, one of the Council species, secretly provided intelligence on Krell Prime's defenses. They couldn't openly support humanity, but they could offer information. 2 former subject species, the reptilian Vrex and insectoid Chitters, openly joined the fight. They'd been slaves to the Krell for generations and saw humanity as their chance for freedom. They brought ships and warriors who'd been waiting for someone to stand up to their oppressors. The coalition fleet grew to 97 ships. Still pathetically small compared to the Krell Armada, but it was more than Jake had dared hope for. Amy drilled her pilots relentlessly. They practiced attack runs until they could fly them blind. She pushed them hard because she knew gentleness would get them killed. Better to hate her in training than die in combat. Kate performed miracles of engineering. She rigged reactor cores for maximum output, installed salvaged Krell weapons, and created jury-rigged shield systems that might last 10 minutes under fire. She worked 20-hour days and slept at her workstation. Helen organized the fleet into battle groups, assigning roles and objectives. She knew they couldn't win through firepower, so she planned for chaos. Confuse the enemy, break their formations, create gaps for strike teams to exploit. Jake prepared for the ground assault. He'd lead a team to the surface targeting the Krell High Command's war center. It was a one-way mission. Everyone who volunteered knew it. But dozens did anyway, including Marcus, who'd learned more about Krell culture and tactics than any other human alive. Vera Schmidt sent a final message from the Council. We can't help you officially, but know this. If you succeed, if you actually pull this off, the Council will recognize humanity as a sovereign species. You'll have a voice in galactic affairs. It won't bring back Earth, but it's something. The night before they left, Jake walked through the fleet. He visited each ship, spoke with each crew. They were young and old, military and civilian, people who'd been miners and teachers and engineers before the war made them soldiers. They were also tired, bone-deep exhausted. 2 years of constant fighting had worn them down. But they hadn't given up. They'd lost their world, their families, their futures. All they had left was each other and the mission. Do you think we can win? A young pilot asked Jake. She couldn't have been more than 20. Jake gave her an honest answer. I don't know, but I know we're going to try. And I know that whatever happens, the Krell will remember us. They wanted to erase humanity. Instead, they taught us how to be what they feared most. The fleet assembled at the edge of Krell space. 97 ships against an empire. It should have been laughable. But the humans weren't laughing. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant Spirit and looked at the faces of his crew. Amy at the tactical station. Kate in engineering. Helen commanding the 2nd battle group. Marcus preparing to decipher Krell communications in real time. All ships, Jake transmitted to the fleet. This is it. This is the moment everything has led to. They took our home. They killed our families. They tried to extinguish us. Today we show them what happens when you attack Earth. Today, we show them what humanity really is. He paused, then gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships, jump to Krell Prime, for Earth, for the billions, for everyone we've lost. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, 97 ships heading straight into hell. The Krell Dominion was about to learn why you never attack someone's home. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Krell Prime system, and alarms immediately began shrieking across the Krell homeworld. Jake watched on his tactical display as the defensive network came alive. Orbital stations powered up their weapons. Krell warships scrambled from dock. Energy shields materialized around critical installations. The Dominion's capital had never been attacked in 10,000 years. Now humans were at their doorstep. All ships execute battle plan, Jake ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the command chair. "Remember, we're not here to win pretty. We're here to make them bleed." The fleet split into 3 groups. Helen led one toward the orbital stations, drawing their fire. Paul took another group to engage the scrambling warships. Jake's group headed straight for the planetary shields, looking for a gap to get ground forces through. The Krell opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams and missile trails. A human frigate died instantly, cut in half by a defensive platform. Then another. And another. The Krell weapons were designed to stop invasion fleets. The human ships were converted cargo haulers and improvised warships, but the humans had one advantage. They weren't trying to survive. Helen's battle group flew straight into the defensive fire, not dodging, not retreating. Her ships traded their lives for targeting data, marking weak points in the station network. She lost 12 ships in 5 minutes, but the data she sent back let Jake's group know exactly where to strike. Amy launched her fighters, 300 small craft screaming toward the orbital stations. Krell point defense systems tore through them like paper. Amy watched her pilots die on her tactical screen, each one a friend she'd trained personally. But they kept coming, overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. "We've got an opening," Marcus called out. He'd identified a gap in the planetary shields, a momentary weakness created by the chaos of battle. 15 seconds before it closes. "All strike craft, follow me through," Jake ordered. He piloted the Defiant Spirit personally, diving toward the gap. Behind him came a dozen assault ships carrying the ground forces. Krell fighters intercepted them. The space around Jake's ship filled with weapons fire. A blast took out his port engine. Another stripped away his shields. But he kept flying, pushing the damaged ship through atmosphere, watching the gap in the shields shrink by the second. They made it through with 2 seconds to spare. 8 ships. The other 4 had died in the crossing. Kate's voice came over the comm from the Defiant Spirit's engineering section. "Hull breach on 3 decks. Reactors critical. We've got maybe 10 minutes before containment fails." "That's 9 more than we need," Jake said. "Take us down to the coordinates Marcus provided." The Krell High Command's war center was a massive complex near the capital city. Jake crashed his dying ship into the facility's landing area, using the Defiant Spirit itself as a weapon. The impact killed the ship's engines permanently, but it also took out half the ground defenses. The assault team poured out of the wreckage. 50 humans in combat armor, armed with weapons salvaged from a dozen battles. They'd trained for this moment for months. Most knew they wouldn't survive the next hour. Jake led from the front, Marcus beside him reading Krell tactical displays and directing the team through the facility. They fought past automated defenses and elite Krell warriors. Every corridor was a battle. Every room cost lives. Above them, the space battle raged. Helen's group had destroyed 6 orbital stations but lost 30 ships doing it. Paul's warships were trading kills with the Krell fleet, accepting losses that would horrify any sane commander. The Vrex and Chitter allies were dying alongside humans, united in their hatred of the Dominion. Amy's fighter wing was down to 50 craft. She'd personally shot down 11 Krell interceptors, but her best friend had died covering her approach. She kept flying because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant breaking. The assault team reached the High Command Center. The doors were reinforced, designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Jake planted charges they'd built from Krell explosives, then detonated them. The blast was barely enough, but it created a gap. They pushed through into a massive command chamber. Dozens of Krell officers worked at stations, coordinating the defense. At the center stood Supreme Commander Thrain, the architect of Earth's destruction. The battle was brief and brutal. Half the assault team died in the firefight, but humans had been fighting desperate battles for 2 years. The Krell command staff weren't warriors. They were administrators who'd never faced an enemy that refused to quit. Jake shot his way to Thrain. The Supreme Commander stared at him with alien eyes that showed confusion more than fear. "You cannot win," Thrain said through Marcus's translation. "Even if you kill me, you cannot defeat the Dominion. Your species is finished." Jake had imagined this moment for 2 years. He'd thought he'd feel rage or satisfaction or something. Instead, he just felt tired. "You don't understand," Jake said. "We already lost everything. Earth is gone. Our families are dead. You took everything we were. But you made a mistake. You thought destroying our home would destroy us. You were wrong." He moved closer, his weapon aimed at the Supreme Commander. "We are our home. Wherever humans stand, Earth lives. You wanted to eliminate a threat before it became dangerous. Instead, you created exactly what you feared. You made us into something that doesn't stop, doesn't surrender, doesn't forgive. Jake triggered the detonator in his armor. Throughout the command center, the assault team did the same. They'd known from the start this was one way. The explosives they carried were enough to level the entire facility. You attacked our home, Jake said. This is what that costs. The explosion consumed the Krell High Command Center, killing everyone inside. The shockwave was visible from orbit, a bloom of fire that marked the end of the Dominion's leadership. Without the High Command, Krell Prime's defense collapsed into chaos. Ships waited for orders that would never come. Stations held their fire, unsure what to do. The rigid command structure that had been the Krell's strength became their fatal weakness. Helen saw the opening and took it. Her remaining ships hit the confused defenders with everything they had. Paul's group joined in, hammering the paralyzed Krell fleet. The Vrex and Chitter forces, seeing their oppressors vulnerable, fought with renewed fury. The battle turned into a slaughter. Not of humans, but of Krell. The defensive network fell piece by piece. The orbital stations were destroyed. The fleet scattered or surrendered. By the time the human forces withdrew, Krell Prime's defenses were shattered. The Ghost Fleet limped away from the battle. Of 97 ships that entered the system, 29 survived. Over 2,000 humans died, including everyone in the ground assault team. Amy had lost 70% of her pilots. Kate's engineering crews had kept damaged ships running through impossible circumstances, but the toll on them was visible. But they'd done it. They'd struck at the heart of the Krell Dominion and shattered it. News of the attack spread through the galaxy within hours. The Krell High Command was dead. The species that had ruled for 10 millennia was leaderless. On 200 worlds, subject species rose in open rebellion. The Krell Empire began to fracture, rival factions fighting for control while former subjects seized their freedom. The Council of Free Worlds convened an emergency session. They could no longer ignore what humanity had accomplished. 3 days after the battle, they formally recognized humanity as a sovereign species and granted them a seat on the council. Vera Schmidt, the human diplomat, stood before the assembled species and delivered a message. We didn't want this war. We wanted to explore, to learn, to join the galactic community as partners. The Krell took that choice from us. They killed billions. They destroyed our homeworld. They tried to exterminate us out of fear. She paused, looking at each representative. We've shown you what humans become when you take everything from them. Remember this lesson. Because if you ever make the same mistake the Krell did, you'll learn why they feared us. The surviving humans began the long process of rebuilding. They established a new capital on Mars, transforming the colony into the seat of human government. They built memorials on what remained of Earth, listing the names of the billions who died. Helen took charge of the reconstruction effort, her mining expertise invaluable in building new infrastructure. Paul commanded the reformed human defense fleet, training new crews to protect the scattered colonies. Marcus became humanity's ambassador to the freed species, helping them rebuild after the Krell's fall. Kate survived the war, but lost both legs when a reactor breach trapped her in an engineering section. She refused prosthetics, saying her wheelchair reminded her why she fought. She became the chief engineer for all human shipyards, designing the next generation of vessels. Amy didn't survive to see peace. She died 3 weeks after Krell Prime, killed when her fighter suffered a reactor malfunction during a routine patrol. They buried her ashes on Mars next to the other war dead. Her last words, recorded in her flight log, were simple. We won. It was worth it. 6 months after the battle, the memorial on Earth was completed. It stood in what had once been Central Park in New York, a massive black wall listing every name of every person who died in the attack. At its center was a single sentence, the words that had sparked humanity: